Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Earth Day. Greetings from Jakarta. My name is Colm Downs, and I'm the Director for English Education and Society. I'm delighted to be joining you today for this special event for English teachers, a climate action in language education event. We have teachers from across the world registered for this special webinar today. So greetings wherever you are in East Asia or South Asia, Europe, or even in the Americas if you've got up early. It's really exciting for us to be launching two new special products today. I've got a great lineup of speakers who will be joining me today to talk more about these products. But to kick things off in this event today, I'm very pleased to introduce our Director for English Programs at the British Council globally from London. So I'm going to hand over to Michael Colony to say a few words as our opening remarks today. Michael, over to you.
Thanks very much, Colm. I'm delighted to be joining you today from London to launch this special event for English teachers on World Earth Day. Today we launch a range of new resources for English teachers looking for innovative ways to integrate climate change issues into their classroom. However, before we get started, I'd like to say a few words about the importance of climate change education and our work in the British Council in support of UN Sustainable Development Goal 4 on quality education and UN SDG 13 on climate action. Ultimately, what this is all about is tackling climate change and the role everyone can play in this battle to limit emissions to 2 degrees or ideally 1.5 degrees this century. Education experts agree that climate change education is crucial to promote climate action and in achieving this aim. Climate change education helps people understand and address the impacts of the climate crisis, empowering them with the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes needed to act as agents of change. And climate change is not just a topic to be covered in science subjects. UN SDG 13 on climate action calls for all countries to integrate climate change education throughout the education system, to mainstream it in national education policies, across the curricula, and assessment in all subjects. Experts say that to ensure effective learning and deep understanding of the subject matter, climate change education should be integrated across school curricula at all levels. This includes English language teaching. English language teachers have a critical role to play to equip students with the skills required to be able to raise to these challenges. The British Council has a long history of addressing climate change through the English language, through education and arts and culture. Our Climate Connection programme builds on this by providing opportunities for young people, policymakers, artists, scientists, early career researchers, as well as English teachers to find creative and collaborative solutions to climate change. As part of our English programs work, we have developed a specific strand of work called Climate Action in Language Education. Under this strand, we have developed a range of new resources to help English teachers confidently integrate climate change issues into their teaching. Since April, over 100,000 English teachers and students have directly engaged with our resources and initiatives from over 120 countries around the world. So what have we done so far? We have developed a 10-part podcast series called The Climate Connection, a series exploring the relationship between the climate crisis and language education. We've developed a Climate Action in Language Education online course, or MOOC, designed to train English language teachers on how to integrate environmental issues into English language teaching. This MOOC has already been completed by 6,000 teachers from around the world, and we hope to run it again later this year. Today, I'm delighted we are launching two new exciting free resources for English teachers. The first is a publication, Climate Action in Language Education, Activities for Low Resource Contexts. So this publication provides teachers with a bank of 30 activities based on 10 climate change themes, with step-by-step guidance for each activity. The activities cover a range of levels and age groups and each explores climate change through one of 10 topics, from sports to storms, from farming to fashion. They are designed with flexibility in mind and can be integrated within existing curricula, and are all designed for contexts with limited access to audio equipment, printing, or photocopying facilities. You're going to hear a little bit more about this publication and how you can use it from Kath and Tom in a moment. Secondly, today, we're also going to launch a series of new climate action videos and teacher and student resource packs. Last year, we ran a video competition for schools. We asked teachers and students to send us videos about their work to address climate change in their schools and in their communities. Now we've been working with the Digital Learning Associates. We have created 3 new videos selecting extracts from the best of more than 200 entries to the competition. Each video is about 3 to 4 minutes and comes with a full set of teaching and student resources for a 45-minute English lesson themed on taking action on environmental issues. Today, I'm delighted to say we have the director of the Digital Learning Associates, Stephen Haggard, with us. And Stephen is going to introduce this webinar series in a short while and talk about how you can use these videos and lessons in your classes. I'd like to close my opening remarks with some comments from the UK Secretary of State for Education, Nadhim Zahawi. In the UK's new climate and sustainability education strategy, Mr. Zahawi states, education is critical to fighting climate change. We have both the responsibility and privilege of educating and preparing young people for a changing world, ensuring they are equipped with the right knowledge, understanding, and skills to meet their biggest challenge head on. I hope these new resources will make you feel more confident about integrating climate change issues into your teaching practice and inspire more climate action with your students wherever in the world they are teaching. Thanks very much, and I'll hand back to Colin.
Thank you very much, Michael. So I didn't introduce the other side of my job at the beginning. I am the director for our English programs in Indonesia, but I've been very fortunate to lead our climate action in language education work for the British Council. And I have been, through that role, working with different experts across the English language teaching sector to help develop new resources for teachers and students worldwide. And I'm delighted that some of those experts are with me today. So last year, our Teaching English team, we asked some of the co-founders of a Facebook group called ELT Footprint to write some new innovative lessons for our Teaching English website. And one of those founders is here today. Her name is Catherine Billsborough. You may have seen her recently talking about materials development on our Teaching English Facebook website. So Kath is going to tell us a little bit more about the background to writing these lesson plans. So over to you, Kath.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. It's lovely to see so many people here today, and it's very exciting to be launching these products or helping the British Council launch these products today. As Colin said, I am one of the co-founders of the ELT Footprint community, and there are 4 of us in total, and I know that the other 3 are also here today. So Christopher Graham is here, Kerry Jones is here, and Daniel Barber is here. So if anyone's got any particular questions about ELT Footprint, put them in the chat box and one of my colleagues will answer them. We were absolutely thrilled when we were contacted by the British Council and asked to collaborate on this project, because one of the things that we had noticed within the ELT Footprint group was a great interest from teachers, teacher trainers, educators, a great interest in bringing more environmental issues into the classroom. But one of their concerns was that many people didn't feel that they didn't have the expertise necessary, they didn't have access to materials, they didn't know where to start, etc. So we've been working on this for a couple of years, but when the British Council came along and proposed what they proposed to us about writing lesson plans in the first place, we were very, very happy. And I was particularly happy at the fact that all of these resources were going to be free, because as you all know, we live in a world that's very divided in many ways, and it's not only technology, etc., which we'll talk about later, but some teachers simply can't afford to buy resources for their students. So having these free resources is just fantastic. So I just thought I'd explain very briefly about how we came to write the resources we did. And then later, Tom will explain what he did with them and how he moved on to create the low resource context pack, if you like. So 3 of us from the ELT Footprint group, Daniel, Chris and myself, were working on these plans, and we were asked initially to write 12 plans. So we thought it was very important to have as broad a context as possible. So we had to think about who would be using them, what kind of students would be using them. So we decided to have a range of age groups first. So we've got primary, lower secondary, upper secondary and adults. And then we decided that we needed a range of levels. And this is especially important, I think, because very often when we see materials maybe with a very specific focus like these, the levels are often high levels, but we want beginner students to be tackling the environment in class too. So we made sure that our lesson plans started at A1 and went right up. So we divided them out in terms of levels and ages, and then we thought of topics and we tried to get as wide a range as possible. And then we divided up the work, if you like, according to where most of our experience lay. And what we did, the great thing about creating materials with a team of other writers, if you like, is that you automatically have extra pairs of eyes, you have other people with their input, you discuss things, you think, is this going to work? Somebody will have another idea, etc. And we came up with these 12 lesson plans, and I'm very, very proud of the part that I've played in creating these. It was very nice to be able to create these materials without the usual restrictions that materials writers have from publishers. You know, usually we're told, you can't do this, you can't do that. But this time we were more or less told, just do it, because the world needs these materials, if you like. And I've heard from various teachers who've been using the lesson plans, and I think the proof is in the pudding always, okay? So, you know, we can write lesson plans, we can come up with materials, but until teachers are using them in the classroom in different contexts, and we hear back from those teachers, we can never be entirely 100% sure that they work well or they work in multiple contexts. And we've had very good feedback, and that is the most that's the most important thing. The most important thing are the end users, so the teachers and the students. One thing I'd like to say is that when we created them, we suddenly had to think as well about 2 versions, if you like. We had to think about print versions, and you know, what teachers would do in the classroom, a traditional classroom, if you like. And then we had to think about the digital version, because lots of teaching has been taken place online. So, you know, we built that into the materials, if you like. But at the back of my mind, and I know my colleagues are the same, we always had this nagging little thing telling us, what about those teachers who live and work in low resource contexts? What if they don't have a printer? What if they don't have what we are expecting them to have at their disposal in order to be able to use these materials? So I'm not going to talk about what happened next, but I'm really excited and so pleased that I wasn't the only one thinking along those lines, if you like, because within ELT Footprint, very often, it's a very humbling experience, because those of us who live in a privileged environment where we have access to all kinds of things that we often take for granted, we might share an idea or we might share an article, and then somebody who's a member of the group will say, oh yeah, that's all very well for you, but actually I don't even have a classroom. I just have a tent, and we don't have books, and we don't have any of these things that you're assuming that we have. So I'm constantly being taken down a peg or two, if you like, and it's a real learning experience. So it's great that we've moved on, if you like, and done the next stage. I'm checking the time. If you notice, I'm glancing up like this every minute. I know there's lots of us who've got lots of things to say. So I'm just going to stop there, and I'm going to be handing over in a minute to Colm, who'll be handing over to Tom. But I'll just end by inviting every single person watching today to join the ELT Footprint community. Come along, check us out. On Facebook is probably the first place to visit us. And let's take action together, because together we can do really great things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kath, for your hard work, along with your fellow co-founders of ELT Footprint, for writing such brilliant lessons, which have already been downloaded over 50,000 times, and for all of your work at ELT Footprint to lead the way really on climate action in language education, and for supporting those of us that are following in your footsteps. As you said, I'm now going to hand over to Tom Crowell, who's in India at the moment, because Tom has taken on the challenge of converting these online lessons into a new resource. So Tom, tell us what you've been doing, and maybe I think you're going to demonstrate an activity for us.
Okay, thank you, Coleman. Thank you, Kath. And yeah, the material that I agreed to adapt to low resource context was really impressive, and I used some of the lessons myself, I found that I was actually adapting them to low resource contexts, and kind of supporting teachers with them on the English Connects project that I was working on in sub-Saharan Africa. And so I was thrilled when Colm got in touch to take this project further and to make these resources available for those teachers who don't have all the kind of modern conveniences that many of us are accustomed to. So it was agreed that there'd be two parts to the adapted materials. The first was, yes, the low resource context. And the second one was to make it activity-based, and to, because on the project that I was working on, most of the teachers had quite short classes, and it was sometimes a challenge to fit in a 60-minute or 90-minute lesson plan into a class, and to adapt it to the existing curriculum. So yeah, my role was kind of to turn some of those lesson plans into shorter activities, low or no resource activities, and to maybe add a few more and adapt them so that they're available to kind of a different and a wider audience. So I'm going to just show you a little bit of an example of what I've done, but for that I need to share my screen. So please be patient with me as I fiddle with my PowerPoint and Zoom. Okay, so I hope everyone can see my my screen. Okay, so yeah, the book is actually divided into two parts. The first part is an introduction and some ideas on how to integrate these materials into classes. But the majority of it is actually part two, which are the activities. And so I've just done a screenshot of the part two table of contents. I've put together a useful map where it shows the names of the chapters, which are mostly based on what you might know from the existing lesson plans. And then you can see the activities, the language focus, the level and age, the time required for each of the activities. Of course, it's hard to judge that, and then the page number. So, and there are 10 units with 3 activities per unit of different and varying lengths. So they can be put together into a lesson, or they can be done separately, added on to lessons. So it's quite flexible. And some of them are taken quite directly from the original materials. Others have been adapted quite a lot more. So, and I'll show you an example of one of them. So yeah, you can see the units and the themes. Let me just advance to the next page. Okay, so yeah, the unit I want to show you and the activities from Unit 4, which is sports in climate crisis. Some of you might be familiar with it. And each of the units has a little bit of a blurb, like a little description of what's in the unit. They have, oops, sorry. It's actually got a link to the original lesson plan for those who want to consult the original lesson plan. And then it's got some words of wisdom for inspiration. So I'll just go straight ahead and show you the example activity that I have chosen. So I'm just going to adjust my screen a little bit because after 2 years in Zoom, I still haven't exactly got it right. Okay, there we are. So yeah, as Kat said, I've kept as much as I could the same as the original material. So there's each activity has a title, an aim, a language focus, a level, a suggested level, and time. So it's all kind of mapped out as in the table of contents. And so in this case, this is actually sorry. So this activity is actually a teacher, it's a bit of a traditional activity, it's a dictation. So it's a teacher-led dictation. So I've converted some of the readings into live listenings that the teacher can read. Here it's kind of a dictation. There are a couple of dictations in the activities. And so you might think, okay, well, traditional dictation, that's kind of boring. Students get that all the time. This one's actually a little bit different. It requires the students to listen carefully, to understand what they're writing down, and it requires them to think critically about the meaning of the headlines. So, so basically here the teacher reads some headlines and the students have to classify them into different categories. So yeah, it kind of combines traditional teaching, which you might find in the low resource classroom, with kind of maybe more communicative, interactive teaching ideas. So I try to stick to those sorts of principles. Okay, so yeah, we can see here, this is a screenshot from the activity, and the procedures are quite clearly spelled out. They're step by step. So here the teacher is meant to introduce the topic. In this case, it's sport and climate change. And of course, learners don't always connect to the two. It's not exactly clear. So it's something to engage the learners with, brainstorm some ideas and so on. And here the two categories we're looking at is how sport affects climate, and then how climate affects sport. So sport affects climate. For example, if there's an event and athletes and fans fly in or come into the event, this creates a carbon footprint with people flying in on airliners and so on. So that is an example of sports affecting the climate. Yeah. In contrast, the climate and the way that it is changing affects sport. For example, sports matches might not be able to be played in midday because it's too hot. Yeah, so it's necessary to introduce the learners to this, to get them kind of prepared for this. And so, yeah, it's a dictation activity. So I would lead off with kind of an example. So for example, the first headline is "Extra Flight for Fans to Attend the World Cup." It's like a news headline. Yeah. And the next one is "Hot Weather Forces Evening Football Matches." Yeah, so the teacher reads them and the students write them. Yeah, that's the idea. Okay, so what I'd like to do, I'm going to take this to the next page. I've adapted this for the screen so I could share it with you. So I'm going to read a few more sentences, and you can try it at home if you'd like. So here the students would draw in their notebook a simple T chart. Column 1, sports affects climate. Column 2, climate affects sport. So the teacher reads the sentence and the students have to write the sentence, but they have to choose the correct column. Which one is it? Yeah. So you don't have to write it, but maybe in the chat box, you could, after I finish saying each sentence, you could say it goes into column 1 or column 2. So just trying to make it a little bit interactive for all of you, all the participants at home. Okay, so I'm going to read the next sentence. So cars and equipment arrive for Formula One race. Cars and equipment arrive for Formula One race. Everyone's saying column 1. Okay, yeah, so let's have a look. Sorry. Okay, well done. Okay, you're excellent teachers. Okay, I'll do another one. Cyclone destroys volleyball courts. Cyclone destroys volleyball courts. Okay, the chats are coming. Column 2, well done. Okay, so yeah. Okay, and I'll do the next one. Runner suffers heat stroke during race. Runner suffers heat stroke during race. Okay, column 2. Some people said column 1. Okay, that one's a little bit trickier. Okay, most people say column 2, and you would be right. So it's it's because it's so hot. The runners are suffering health issues as a result. So it's climate affecting the athletes and sport. Okay, and I'll do one more. Forest cut down to build golf course. Forest cut down to build golf course. Okay, let's look at the chats coming in. Okay, column 1. Okay, wow, you're good. Okay, so great. Okay, so perfect. So you get the idea. Yeah, that's so for students, this is quite so they would actually write them in the column. You'd read, as the teacher, you would read them out one after the other and then go over them. At the end, of course, you could work in groups, pairs or groups, and they could compare and so on. And then you could invite students to write them on the board, or a representative of each group to write them in the correct column. So it's kind of a more interactive or at least a dictation that requires some critical thinking. So a little bit of an improvement on kind of traditional kind of classroom approaches. So, and then I'll go to the next slide. So as an optional extension, I've put in some optional extensions here. Groups can come up with their own headlines, yeah? And so given a few minutes, they come up with 1, 2, 3, 4 headlines, and they can read them out to the others, and the other students have to say, okay, that's column 1 or it's column 2, and so on. So that's kind of a typical activity in this publication. Some are, as Kat said, some are targeted at higher levels, some at lower levels, but they're designed to be adapted and yeah, basically adjusted to any teaching context. So it's a little bit of teaching unplugged, and I think it's a nice complement to what we have already out there, what the original authors did. So I know that I'm running out of time now, so I will say thank you to you for listening and for contributing, and I will stop sharing and hand over back to Colm.
Thank you so much, Tom. That was brilliant. I love that activity. You'll be pleased to know that the original author of the lesson plan, Daniel Barber, is with us, and I think he just wrote some very nice comments in the chat about your adaptation. I've put a link to the free publication. It's free. It's on our Teaching English website. I'll be putting all the links in the chat again at the end, so you can download it and share it with as many teachers as possible and try out those activities with your students tomorrow or on Monday, tomorrow, Saturday. That's our first resource. I'm really delighted today that we have two new resources or sets of resources that we're launching in this special event on World Earth Day. The first were activities or lesson plans for teachers. So there's online lessons, or these lessons are for low resource contexts. But the second set of resources are very innovative. They are video-based resources. So just a brief introduction before I hand over to Stephen. Last year, together with our schools team at the British Council, we had a competition. We called it the Climate Action School Video Competition. And we invited schools and students to send us a video about climate action in their school or community. And we had over 200 schools send us some fantastic videos from all around the world. We selected the best 10, but there were really many more than 10 that were fantastic. And one of the reasons that we wanted to run this competition was to inspire others. And we wanted to try to get this wonderful practice seen by as many students as possible and try to get these videos into English language lessons. So we reached out to one of the experts in English language teaching and video innovation, the Digital Learning Associates. We're delighted that we've been working with the Digital Learning Associates, or the DLA, to develop these fantastic videos and turn them into resources for the classroom. So I'm going to hand over to Stephen, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the work they've done, and then we're going to see one of the videos as well. So Stephen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Colm. Great to be here, and good morning from London to everyone. So yeah, my company, DLA, we create the video learning resources that drive a lot of the ELT products that you may be using around the world, from commercial publishers, in schools, even the British councils. And we took the job from Colm to compile the best of the entries that came into the competition for showing what our school is doing around climate change, compile them into some video resources for schools. So that's what we're going to show one of to you today. This is really a showcase for what young people, students, children are doing around climate and sustainability in their schools. Each of these videos also has a full resource kit that goes with it. That resource kit allows a teacher, particularly one who may not be used to working with video, to get a really strong lesson with activities that are appropriate for climate education to get that done with their class. These are resources that are really designed for the generation that likes video, that wants video, that feels video is its natural medium. That's an important part, I think, of the reach out on climate, is to talk to young people in the language and the formats that they want. So video is obviously very big, is high up there. So we made these videos to the same kind of standards and the same kind of learning design that's used by about 10 million of our students around the world, of English learners. That means, that they are professionally produced, and they follow a sort of, as strong a narrative as we can get out of them. Obviously, these materials are produced often by children for the competition, sometimes technically, whatever it is, they're a bit edgy. But they're energetic, and it's been fantastically exciting for us as video producers to work with this kind of community material from schools around climate. It's really super to be able to have young people show each other what they're doing, what they believe in, and what their potential is when they decide to think about and work on climate. So I think what we should do now, Colm, is play one of the videos. There are 3 in this series, and I've selected one for today called Power to Change. So let's just take it away and watch a video.
Hi, I'm Shivani, and this is our series about what young people are doing to help reduce climate change. Thanks to a competition run by the British Council, I've been able to find out what students from schools around the world are doing. The students made videos about their projects and how they're putting them into action. As young people, we've got great power to help change things for the better. Let's head straight to India. The students from a junior college are using their skills and knowledge to help a village get light. The village has electricity from one of the big companies, but they can't afford to pay for it. So the students developed an affordable and sustainable solution.
To tackle the problem of electrification, in our first phase, we have introduced the concept of Akash Deep. A 1.5-litre plastic bottle is filled with distilled water and a few drops of bleach. The bottle is then fixed onto the roofs of houses by drilling a hole. The sun rays incident on the water in the bottle get refracted, undergo multiple reflections and total internal reflection, due to which light spreads out. This phenomenon illuminates the room with brightness equal to a 60-watt bulb.
Isn't that amazing? It shows that when we work as a group, we can achieve incredible things. One very simple thing we can do together is clean up the rubbish around us.
So today, we are going to talk about plastic waste management. Are you guys ready? I can hear you. Let's get started.
In Malaysia, teachers and students work together to clean up the water and the area around 2 villages. They collect plastic waste to reduce water pollution and clean up the area around it. Look how much rubbish they collected. We can also reuse the waste materials that we have.
At Razavi, we have started a recycling system where we separate all our rubbish. The recyclable rubbish goes to Clean Marandera, where it is made into all sorts of useful things.
In Zimbabwe, the students joined up with a community organisation called Clean Marandera, which helps people reduce, reuse and recycle. They learnt how to make bags out of upcycled milk cartons. How cool is that? In India, the students used their creative skills to solve a very different problem. Every year, during the festival of Ganesh, people take statues of the god and immerse them in water. But these statues are made of plaster of Paris and usually painted with toxic paints. The students began to create fully biodegradable statues of Ganesh, made of mud and straw. They then painted them with natural colours, like coal and turmeric, and then asked people to put them in buckets at home and not in rivers. It helps prevent water pollution.
I am sure Lord Ganesha is happy with us and will help us bring this climate revolution in all the homes in the coming years.
I think making environmentally friendly statues is a brilliant idea, and I'm going to work on that with my family. What could you do to make your celebrations more sustainable and help tackle climate change? All these projects are incredible, and I hope they've given you lots of ideas too. Imagine if we all did just one more thing to help reduce climate change and look after the environment. Until the next time, here's a song composed and performed by Cheska from the Philippines. You'll also see the school's amazing artwork, all made from recycled materials.
Everything that we do have might one day fade away. The world that we do love is changing day by day. Unless we all be heroes that will save the day. Let us work together and let's make a change. Let us look for a solution, put our words into action and change the world.
Fantastic, thanks, Colm. So we've got three different kinds of resource support to make sure that anybody working with those videos gets a really great value lesson out of it. We have a transcript, we have a student pack, and we have a teacher guide. And I'm going to show you those just very briefly now with a screen share so that you know what they look like if you're ever planning to use them. Okay, so I'll just take you through the three of them. The transcript, as you can see, is the full text of the video, which is a useful resource for both teachers and students in the lesson. It also lists the key vocabulary that you might need as an English teacher. The teacher guide is everything that a teacher needs to use to get through the lesson. It shows what skills are being covered in this lesson, a comparison, discussion, and innovations, and the writing skill of a blog. Crucially, it also has the sustainable development goals that are applicable to this lesson. So if you're looking to deliver a sustainable development goals lesson, you know what SDGs you can get out of it. Finally, it's got a student pack. This is a printable, or it could be used online, that a student would have in front of them as they work on their own or in a group, that gives them the templates for any activity that they might be doing as part of the lesson. So these three resources are very closely linked, and I'm just going to take you through how they work. So let's start with the student pack. Very important when you're working with video to orient the students at the very beginning to what this is about. Otherwise, they're just going to want to, focus on the other kids' hairstyles or uniforms or something. We want to make sure they're on the right topic here. So we've given them this quote. It's from Greta Thunberg, actually. I've learned you're never too small to make a difference. And we ask them to think about things that they can do to make a difference. This is a really important aspect, I think, of climate education. We're learning about how we respond as people. We're learning civic disposition. We're learning collective action. We're learning agency. And you want to start there, I think, not necessarily just with the dry facts, the scientific facts of it. Let's now look at the teacher guide and move to the next stage of the lesson, which is while watching. While the students are watching, they have a great opportunity for doing some English comprehension. So we suggest two activities that they can do. And if we look at them in the student pack, those are, first of all, ticking three innovations that are mentioned in this video. So for example, did we see wind turbines? No. So you wouldn't tick that one, but you might tick F, biodegradable statues. So that's a way of just confirming comprehension. And there's another multiple choice activity, which just again invites children to focus very closely on the text using the transcript or replaying the video. Let's look at this one, for example. Why did the team in Malaysia clean up beauty spots? A, they hate single-use plastic. B, they help animal and human environments. C, they want to raise awareness about the dangers of litter. So they could choose the one that they think is best. It's probably B. But interestingly, I think in these kind of exercises with video, it's not just about assessing did they get the answer right. Actually, all of those answers are okay, though B is the one that they do say in the film. The point is they're being introduced to language around the environment and ways of expressing concern and taking action. The evidence of learning is in the fact that they've decided to engage in the video and watch it a second time, rather than that they've got the right answer on these comprehension questions. And then finally, let's have a quick look at what they might do after this. So we've created an activity here which looks at the two innovations that came from the Indian schools, the light in the ceiling and the Ganesh statues. And we've asked the students to do a comparison activity. So it says, in pairs, compare these two innovations and discuss which one would have the biggest impact. Think about the difficulty, the cost, the quality of life impact, and the environmental impact, and the urgency, the need for change. So this is an activity which obviously introduces comparative language, lots of very good kind of grammar building expressions. This is more important than that because. But I think crucially here, this is the heart of what climate education is about, really. It's about models for what it means to be accountable for what you do. I've chosen that I think the Ganesh statue is a better way of addressing an environmental issue because I need to explain that. I need to be accountable for my decisions in front of everybody else. I need the language for how to do that if I'm to be part of the solution, which is what we want young people to be. So that delivers both a language and a climate goal simultaneously. And then the final aspect of all climate work is projects. This really is the consensus of every climate educator, that students need to experience actually being part of the response to climate challenge, leading that response. And this is an experiential, not an academic kind of learning. You need to be engaged in a process. So we've given them a process here, which is, imagine that you are running a festival. Let's take the idea of the Ganesh one that came out of the film. How would you make that festival greener? How would you make it more environmentally constructive? So we've given them a mind map, how I could do that, how I could improve the environmental impact of a festival that I've thought about. And we've given them a planning tool to communicate that here. So these are the tips I would give to the organizer of the festival. And this is my conclusion. So it's an activity that would deliver some technical insight, obviously, about things that we can do that might make our impact lower. But crucially, I think it also develops the voice of the learner. The learner learns to speak up about their world and what they can do to change things in their world. It's an exercise in building a program for action, and that's clearly a very important part of what we try to do in climate education. We do also add, and I'll just show it here at the very end, a CLIL project. That's in the teacher's notes. You may, as a teacher, want to actually make sure that the technical and scientific content around something to do with the environment is covered in your learning. And we've given an example here, which you could pick up. This is actually about making an innovation, doing something that solves a problem in your area. Anyway, that is the typical structure of our resources, and I do encourage you to use them if it helps you, or abandon it if it doesn't, but they're a way of thinking about how you combine both the language learning element and the climate learning element in using these kind of video materials. Colm, I'm handing back to you now.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Well, I hope you're as blown away by that video and those resources as I've been. Before I forget, because I think what you all want is a link so you can find them. So I'm putting a link in the chat right now. So what I've put in the chat, and we'll share them again at the end, is a link to not just that video, but you've only seen one. There are, in fact, 4 videos. There are 3 compilation films, including the winners of the competition. You haven't seen the compilation yet of the winners. So after this webinar, not just yet, I strongly encourage you to go and check those out. And there's an extra video that we have put together, specifically a really fantastic climate action project conducted by a school in Ukraine. So there are 4 videos in total with student packs and resource packs for you to use in class. We have about 7 minutes left. I've got a few questions for our experts, so I'm going to invite them to join me and to come back, if we can do that. I think my colleague is going to bring Kath and Tom and Stephen to join me. If you have questions in the chat, put questions in the chat and I'll try and pick them up. Maybe Kath, actually, I know that you're an expert on writing materials. What advice would you give a teacher who wanted to create or write their own materials connected to the climate change challenge?
Thanks, Colin. My advice would be, and I always give this advice, is if you are relatively inexperienced at writing materials, and most of us are as teachers because we're not normally trained to do so, look at some good materials and use them as a model. Now, we've seen some very good materials today, and I would say that they would be perfect to use as a model for creating your own materials. What I like about everything we've seen today, one of the main things I always say to teachers is to keep things simple, and also to remember that we are language teachers. So always to keep in mind the linguistic aims and objectives to what we're doing, because we need to, it's brilliant to be using the environment as the context, but we need always to keep the language in mind so that if we can avoid criticism, then anybody who says, what's the point in doing this? You know, I'm an English teacher. Well, the point is we need to equip the students with a language that they need to take part in these global discussions. And there's no better way of doing it than using this context to extract the language. As Stephen said there, we're giving them the language and we're giving them the whole environmental issues at the same time and making it relatable. So yeah, I would say find something going on in your local area as well. The more local an issue is, the more relatable it is, and the more passionate and the more emotional involvement there is. So you could take any of these ideas and transfer it to your context and copy good practice.
Thank you very much, Kath. Some great advice. I've got a question for Stephen now, or maybe 2 questions in one, because I'm sure he can take on 2 and we're limited for time. I know that, Stephen, you talk a lot to publishers and schools around the world. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what you're hearing about the kind of how receptive they are to video resources or ELT resources in general on climate change education. And maybe secondly, as an expert in video resources for language classrooms, what would be your sort of message to teachers about the main benefits of using video?
Okay, I'll take those in reverse order if I can. I think the value of video is that it engages students on multiple levels. It can be cognitive. There's a fact that they want to think about, maybe something like you suggested, Catherine, something local to them could be relevant there. It's affective as well. It's emotional. Because there's music, because there's character, because there's development of a story, people get emotionally involved in a way that is very specific to the experience of working with video. And then I think finally, particularly in a form of video like this, when you're putting students on the screen and seeing what students are doing, it's existential. It's like, how does this apply to me? What am I doing myself? You imagine yourself in the position. The act of filming makes everyone think, well, what would they say about me if they filmed me? And so it invites us to be involved in multiple ways, as minds, as hearts, as individuals. And that's why it's a very total experience. it means that it's not necessarily good for very specific points of, grammar, fact, vocabulary, spelling, whatever it is. You still need to go back in and build resources to develop the potential. But it does give a very sort of total experience for learners, and I think that's valuable. I mean, in making the resources, and I have to signal that the resources team that wrote these resources to our design, led by Harry Waters, and great work by Harry and all his team in creating good resources from the videos. It's really important to have resources out of videos. Video on itself is not a teaching and learning tool. It's a starting point which makes sure that your students are engaged, awake, alive, and fully thinking in every possible aspect of their being about the material. But you still got to teach. You still got to do the lesson. The second thing I'd like to come to is, is the world out there interested in environmental and climate-related topics for the ELT sector? Well, yeah, I mean, we do provide our library of videos to the world's publishers and school chains, and I can tell you that they are all going crazy for environmental content. The phone is ringing off the hook with, we want to do a new series, a new ELT textbook that will have the SDG goals at its core, or that will be focused on environment or climate or whatever it is. Fortunately, we have a lot of material that allows us to do that. In our library, there's a lot of material that's very explicitly around environmental action or environmental problems. But if you want to sort of think about a year or two into the future, I think the majority of ELT textbooks, certainly the ones that I'm seeing that are video-led, the majority of courses are going to be very much climate-shaped. That's going to be the big story at the heart of a lot of them, certainly. I think you'll still find the sort of standard ones of, just skills-based or topic-based, but the framing concept that the world's ELT industry seems to be moving to for the next generation of courses and texts is climate, no doubt.
Wow, it was a powerful message, great insight. Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm aware of time. I'm going to move on. I've got a question for Tom now. Actually, Tom might not know this, but Tom is probably the first person I ever met who talked about integrating SDGs into English language teaching. I was very lucky to be at a workshop of his, and in about 2016 in Myanmar. So Tom's been an inspiration of mine for a long time, and I'm glad that he's still working in this area. Tom, maybe just to finish with, because I'm aware of time, just because we've got the online lessons, those online lessons, what would you just say to teachers are the main differences between those online 12 lessons and this new publication? And while you do that, I'll put the links in the chat again for everybody.
Sure, thanks for the question, Colm. Yeah, so the 12 original lesson plans are, as I said before, standalone lessons. So they're designed to be done from the beginning to the end as lessons, whereas the publication that's being launched today is activity-based. So they can be maybe more easily integrated into existing lessons. Some of the activities are just 15 minutes. So like the dictation one that I demonstrated earlier, and there are other shorter ones. There are also longer ones as well. So they could actually be expanded into full lessons. So for some teachers, this material might provide a little bit more flexibility. And yeah, as the title kind of suggests, they're designed for low resource contexts. So there are a lot of live listenings, quizzes that the teacher reads out, dictations of things like you saw today, or true false questions, and then kind of the teacher maybe reads a story and the students predict some things about it ahead of time. So it's just adapted to serve that sort of low resource classroom in kind of single activity form. And there are a couple of new activities, some ones that I myself have developed. So Unit 10 is a unit that I put together, and it's on renewable energy. It includes, the last activity is haiku poetry, which might be quite creative and fun for students. So there are some new things in there as well. some of the activities, even in the other units, don't appear in the original plans. So yeah, so it's somewhat of a different approach to those lessons. And I would say we talked about this just when we were preparing for this session, but it would be great even for people who do have access to a wide range of technology and photocopy machines and everything. Sometimes it's quite nice to go back to basics, to teach unplugged, and to just do some live listenings, and put the recorder aside, put the technology away for a lesson or two, and try some of these out, because it's a different dynamic. It kind of brings it back to basics, and I think that's something we could all use no matter where we are teaching. So yeah, but thank you to everyone, and I found this talk really inspirational. And as Colm said, I've been working with the SDGs for many years in my classrooms, and at the time, at the beginning, it was like I was the only one doing this sort of thing, and now I'm really happy to see that it's widespread. So yeah, so well done, and I hope you all of you get something out of these great resources, all of the ones that we've introduced today. So yeah, thank you all.
Thank you very much, Tom. I could stay here and we could talk for a long time. We will have another event, I'm sure, where we will continue this conversation, but I'm aware of time. I want to wrap up by thanking Tom, Kath, Stephen, for joining us today, for your time and your expertise and your hard work on these resources, which we have now launched. They're out there. Happy World Earth Day, everybody. Please go and use them and share these resources with teachers in your schools and communities. We'll be back again soon with new innovations and insight into climate action in language education. But for today, that's it from us at the British Council. Have a great weekend when it comes, and a happy iftar, break fast. If you're in a Muslim country, well, if you're in Indonesia, it is the time right now to have something to drink and something to eat. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you again soon.
All right.